News coming in, the Air Force evacuation flight from Kabul to Qatar came near the record for most people ever flown in the Boeing airlifter. A US Air Force C-17 Globemaster safely evacuated some 640 Afghans from Kabul. The image shows, as you see on your screens, there are hundreds of people jam-packed inside one plane. Thousands of Afghans rushed to the Kabul airport trying to flee the country. We got you those very disturbing images of how many of them were clutching on to the wheels or any part of the Globemaster so that they could get out of Afghanistan. The C-17 wasn't intending to take such a large load, but panicked Afghans who had been cleared to evacuate pulled themselves onto the C-17's half-open ramp. Instead of trying to force those refugees off the aircraft, the crew made the decision to just take off to go. And that's led to over 600 Afghans being taken out of Kabul in Qatar now. Geeta Mohan, our Foreign Affairs editor, is joining us with more details on this. Geeta, that picture perhaps describes what we really saw yesterday of hundreds of Afghans there on the tarmac, on the runway, trying hard to get on board that Globemaster. 640 Afghans, we're being told, have been flown from Kabul to Qatar now.
Well, Akshita, the photograph is certainly, the image certainly is telling of the human tragedy that has befallen Afghans. Those Afghans who do not want to stay under a Taliban administration. Those Afghans who have fled and who also are planning on fleeing. It is a human tragedy that is unfolding in Afghanistan. The US president also, while he continued blaming everyone but the administration on what really has happened and the disaster that is Afghanistan today, did mention that there was a mistake in assessing the situation and how soon Kabul really fell. So the things on the ground are not going to get better. They are going to be one where all countries now have to reconcile with the fact that there is going to be a Taliban administration in Afghanistan. How it will look, how it might really mold itself is something we'll have to wait and see. But the visuals that we saw,
yes,
images, videos that came from Kabul airport are not just heartbreaking. It is one that will haunt the administrations that have been responsible for this.
Apologies, we've lost a connection with Geeta, but those images and the one you see on your screens, the clips that played out yesterday will haunt us for a long, long time and sums up how the locals are so scared and struggling to ensure they get out of Afghanistan no matter what, as the Taliban has taken over. So the world is witnessing the apocalypse that's currently playing out in Afghanistan. For the first time, the entire world is seeing how desperate Afghanis wanting to leave the country are doing whatever they can. They swarmed the Kabul airport runway yesterday, clinging on to the wheel, the wings of a US military plane, desperate to somehow get out. And those images will be etched in our minds forever. It's shocked the entire world. We've also, here at India Today, captured exclusive satellite images of all the mayhem of what's a collapsing nation now.
A nightmare situation at the Kabul airport. As the dawn of the Taliban drove thousands of desperate Afghanis in the frenzied hunt for a way out of the doomed nation, images of massive crowds mobbing first civil airliners and then even trying to grab onto a US military aircraft have shocked and silenced the world. And now, the nightmare at Kabul from a different perspective. This is what the Kabul airport looks like on a normal day. Now watch how Maxar satellite captured this viral video from the air. Huge crowds mobbing an aero bridge to board a waiting civil aircraft. The panicked crowds then spread out across the main flight line and onto the out-of-bounds tarmac area. A shocking violation at any airport. But this is what that crowd looked like from a satellite's camera. The crowds then drifted directly to the runway in a desperate attempt, perhaps, to get on board aircraft that were about to take off. The crowds massed along the tarmac are clearly visible here. And here's a closer view of that crowd, comprised almost entirely of Afghan men. By this time, the airfield was already totally compromised, and a serious danger to both the people and the aircraft operating here, like this Turkish Airlines flight ready to take off. The same crowds gathered along the tarmac would then go on to try and grab onto a giant US C-17 on its takeoff roll. A tragic sequence of events resulting in the horrifying deaths of those who managed to get airborne with the jet. The frenzy outside the airport was no better, with huge crowds surging towards the airport, even scaling its high walls to somehow access the terminal buildings, the aero bridges and the tarmac. As Kabul restricts air access, the future of Afghanistan remains in the lurch. The few journalists reporting from inside the doomed nation will bring one set of images of the catastrophe. Satellites buzzing over the collapsing nation will bring us another. With Ankit Kumar in Delhi, Bureau Report, India Today.
America has come under a lot of criticism because all of this crisis is unfolded in Afghanistan after US withdrew its troops. And President Joe Biden has finally broken his silence, saying that he doesn't regret his decision to pull out troops from Afghanistan. Biden clarified that nation building was never the mission that US had undertaken and that America only got involved in war in the first place to get to those who were responsible for 9/11. Speaking on the chaotic scenes that unfolded in Kabul, Biden said that the situation unraveled more quickly than the US thought, so he did concede that. But he also took on the Afghanistan political and military heads for being unable to reach a consensus and emphasized that US can't win a war that's been lost by Afghan forces. He ended his statement, which lasted about 18 minutes, saying that he won't pass the Afghanistan crisis on to his successor. Vice President Kamala Harris reiterated Biden's stance, saying ending military involvement in Afghanistan was the right decision.
It was this nightmare day in Afghanistan's capital. These hair-raising images of Kabul's total collapse that forced the US president to break his silence. US President Joe Biden, who had been globally criticized for 48 hours for seeming to abandon a country to its political doom.
We don't deserve this! We don't deserve this!
Today addressed his nation and the world, starting with an admission that America was shocked by the swiftness of the collapse.
This did unfold more quickly than we had anticipated. So what's happened? Afghanistan political leaders gave up and fled the country. The Afghan military collapsed, sometime without trying to fight. The developments of the past week reinforced that ending U.S. military involvement in Afghanistan now was the right decision. American troops cannot and should not be fighting in a war and dying in a war that Afghan forces are not willing to fight for themselves.
Biden then proceeded to assign blame for what has happened, pointing a finger directly at the Afghan forces and political leadership.
We gave them every tool they could need. We paid their salaries, provided for the maintenance of their Air Force. We gave them every chance to determine their own future. What we could not provide them was the will to fight for that future. But if Afghanistan is unable to mount any real resistance to the Taliban now, there is no chance that 1 year, 1 more year, 5 more years, or 20 more years of U.S. military boots on the ground would have made any difference. It is wrong to order American troops to step up when Afghanistan's own armed forces would not. When I spoke by phone to Ghani in July, we had very frank conversations. We talked about how Afghanistan should prepare to fight their civil wars after the U.S. military departed. This advice was flatly refused. Mr. Ghani insisted the Afghan forces would fight, but obviously he was wrong.
The US president was on vacation while Afghanistan disintegrated into the hands of the Taliban. But the heat of the catastrophe clearly got too much, and Biden was forced to cut short his vacation and face up to the searing questions he now faces. Biden then went on to provide a detailed justification for the US withdrawal.
We went to Afghanistan almost 20 years ago with clear goals. Get those who attacked us on September 11, 2001. We did that. We severely degraded al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. We never gave up the hunt for Osama bin Laden, and we got him. That was a decade ago. There would have been no ceasefire after May 1. There was no agreement protecting our forces after May 1. There was no status quo of stability without American casualties after May 1. There was only a cold reality of either following through on the agreement to withdraw our forces or escalating the conflict and sending thousands more American troops back into combat in Afghanistan.
In what sounded like an admission after a clear failure to achieve its strategic objectives, Biden said,
"Our mission in Afghanistan was never supposed to have been nation building. Our only vital national interest in Afghanistan remains today what it has always been, preventing a terrorist attack on America's homeland. I've argued for many years that our mission should be narrowly focused on counterterrorism, not counterinsurgency or nation building."
In an emotional appeal to the American people on the back of over 2,000 US service personnel who have lost their lives in the 2-decade mission in Afghanistan, the US president appeared to speak directly to military families and the veteran community.
I stand squarely behind my decision. After 20 years, I've learned the hard way that there was never a good time to withdraw U.S. forces. That's why we're still there. How many more lives, American lives, is it worth? How many endless rows of headstones at Arlington National Cemetery? I'm clear on my answer. I will not repeat the mistakes we've made in the past.
The United States has added over 1,000 troops to existing emergency forces in the country to safely extract US nationals. An exercise that paints the Biden administration with the same brush that the Nixon White House was painted with during the humiliating withdrawal from Vietnam 46 years ago. But he insisted that his move was specifically to avoid a repeat of the Vietnam debacle.
I made a commitment to the brave men and women who serve this nation that I wasn't going to ask them to continue to risk their lives in a military action that should have ended long ago. Our leaders did that in Vietnam when I got here as a young man. I will not do it in Afghanistan. China and Russia would love nothing more than the United States to continue to funnel billions of dollars in resources and attention into stabilizing Afghanistan indefinitely.
As the US comes to terms with unfolding security situation, the days ahead will provide more answers, perhaps than the US president has just done. Bureau Report, India Today.
Now, the world has been, in fact, shocked by what's happening in Afghanistan and stunned really by the speed at which Kabul fell to the Taliban. In what seemed like a clear endorsement, however, for the Taliban in Afghanistan, Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan has said that Afghanistan has broken the shackles of slavery. Imran Khan also spoke about the parallel education system that led to the existence of English medium schools, resulting in the adoption, according to him, of someone else's culture in Pakistan. Pakistan is accused of facilitating the Taliban rebellion, which ultimately also resulted in the capturing of the country after being ousted about 20 years ago. Another country that seems to have swiftly made peace with the Taliban takeover is China. Unsurprisingly, China said that it's willing to develop friendly relations with the Taliban. The Pakistan-China nexus to support terror clearly and on a public stage spells big trouble not just for India but for the entire world. But let's focus on what's happening in Afghanistan. Uncertainty looms large. What comes next now is the biggest question. The Taliban are discussing their future course of action in a meeting in Doha. A top leader said that the current situation is a test for them. These talks are expected essentially to clear the air on the structure of what the future government in Afghanistan is going to look like and possibly a name change as well. Remember, after taking over, Taliban has been calling Afghanistan as the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. Taliban's political deputy leader Abdul Ghani Baradar has said that the current movement is a test for Taliban. He also told a news agency that Taliban's leadership is in contact with the international community and political parties in Afghanistan and will very soon work out the next course of action, what the future is going to look like. So a decision will be taken by the Taliban on exactly what the government structure is going to be like. The decision, of course, will be taken by Doha, which is where a lot of these Taliban terror leaders are currently based. They've been having dialogues with world leaders also. They claim that, they're going to ensure the safety of Afghans. But we all know what happened 20 years ago when Taliban ruled in Afghanistan. A lot of questions have been asked about this terror group and the leadership who's calling the shots right now in Afghanistan. Little is known right now, but here's the information that we have currently. The leader of the Taliban currently is Hibatullah Akhundzada. He is the former Taliban Chief Justice, took over the Taliban back in 2016. So since then, he's been leading the charge. But he is the ultimate authority on any decision that's taken by the Taliban, even with regards to Afghanistan. It is, in fact, Akhundzada who calls the shots. So all decisions, whether it's political, religious or military affairs, all of that, it is Akhundzada who calls the shots. Little is known about him, but there are annual releases also put out by Taliban in which he is named and his statements are put out. What about his political deputy? It is Abdul Ghani Baradar, who's been also corresponding with news agencies, with media. All communications from Taliban is being put out by him. He's a co-founder of Taliban. He's from Kandahar, which is where Taliban originated. He's also the head of the political office in Doha. So a part of all the dialogue that's been happening in Doha. Then you have Mohammad Yaqub. Little known about this terror leader. We don't even have an image of Yaqub. He is, however, the son of the Taliban founder, Mullah Omar. Now, besides that, he's also the military operational commander. So all military moves by the Taliban, even in Afghanistan, is taken by Yaqub. You have Sirajuddin Haqqani. He's the head of the Haqqani network, son of Jalaluddin Haqqani. Again, little known about him, but he's also given a lot of responsibility in the Taliban functioning in Afghanistan. Abdul Hakim is the head of the Taliban judicial structure. The Taliban as a terror group has its own structure, its own heads. So even the judicial structure, Hakim leads. He heads also the negotiation team that's currently based in Doha, talking to world leaders, talking to other countries. Then you have a leadership council. Now it's this council that takes all decisions for the Taliban, the highest decision-making body in Taliban. There are a number of members, 26 of them who are part of this leadership council. Little is known about who exactly is a part of the Taliban leadership council, but this council takes all decisions for the terror group, including what's going to happen next in Afghanistan.